We're counting deer tonight with the distance sampling method, and it's pretty easy to just drive around and count deer and say, oh, we got 12 deer. But the trick is to know how big of an area you covered. So we'll figure out how far we drove, and then we'll know the linear distance, but we need to know the area. And so the way we do that is every time we see a deer, we measure with the rangefinder how far away they were. And we want the perpendicular distance to the road. So hopefully we can just kind of spot where they were when we saw them, drive up to that point and take a rangefinder. Sometimes we might have to take a compass and get an angle. And so we'll have a trail, or the road that we're going down here, and we'll have the different deer that we spot at different distances. So maybe we spot a deer, maybe we got one that's close to the road, one that's far from the road, and we'll have these different distances from the road that we record. And what we can do is there'll be most of the deer will be close to the road, and as they get further from the road, the probability of us seeing them will get less and less. And what we need to do is get enough of these measurements to figure out, for this park at this time of year with this vegetation and this terrain, this is how the probability decreases as they get further from the road. And that lets us figure out the two-dimensional area that we surveyed. So that means the guidelines are 40 of these deer measurements, of these distance to measurements. And so when we've seen 40 deer, then we can say we're done and we can move on to the next site. We'll spot, you know, raccoons and bear, who knows what else we'll spot out there. We'll write those all down. We're probably not gonna put the extra effort in to get 40 distance measurements for bobcats. That would take a long time because they're so rare. But we'll at least get an index, and we'll know, we'll have an abundance estimate in general that we can compare. It might not be, we might not be able to put per kilometer squared, but it'll be a general estimate. And by doing that here, we can compare what we get with the cameras, which is kind of the same idea, but in reverse. So now we're presuming all the deer are out there, and they're basically not moving, and we're moving and we're counting them. The cameras presume the opposite. The camera sits still, and the animals are moving in front of the cameras. So it's kind of the flip side of the same idea that when animals, that you need to move to cover an area and count the animals, or watch one area and let the animals go in front of. So we want to compare what we're getting right now with our camera traps with this sort of old school method of distance sampling. And then also by doing that here, and then also in the game lands, we can look at, in a very similar habitat, very similar environment and elevation and forest type, how does hunting affect the deer densities and the other the whole wildlife community. So that's the plan. So we're going to drive around 5 to 10 miles an hour. I guess you guys will probably be working the spotlights. And so if you see something, tap on the roof and I'll stop. I'll slam on the brakes so you all go flying. No, try not to do that. And then we'll figure out where it is. So spot the deer. If it's a group of deer, that still only counts as one. So it's 40 deer groups. It's not 40 individual deer. And then so we need to count the number of deer that were in that group, because we'll take that into account. And then we'll have to kind of play it by ear. I think Bill says he normally drives, usually they sit there and you can drive up perpendicular, or at least spot the place where they were. And so if they run away, just keep your eye on that tree, and we'll mark that tree.